Hey everybody, my name is Logan Shaw, and I am doing my presentation on ocean freight, the history, process, the impact it has on the supply chain, and COVID-19. Um, we've all had uh, modules in this class discussing ocean freight. I hope to take a deeper dive into this, and hopefully we can all learn something we didn't know before, and kind of how it all affects us more than we think. Ocean freight actually has a pretty deep history. Uh, it dates back to all the way back in 3200 BC. The Egyptians would use water vessels or wooden dinghies, really, to move goods and products across water, down rivers, through ponds. The earliest recorded trade using water vessels was back around 1200 BC. Egypt was trading with Sumatra. They were trading goods, textiles, supplies of all kind. Um, and then China also caught on to the idea around the year 900 AD. They expanded into the ocean freight frontier. They were transporting through the South China Sea and the Indian Ocean, and they were doing the same thing. They were trading, moving goods, products, textiles, building supplies, whatever they needed to move across water, trade with other people. They were doing that. Um, and then more or less more recently, a lot of people think about colonial trade patterns, um, which you can see in this picture. Uh, they traded lumber, sugar, slaves, and much, much more across the Atlantic Ocean. Sea currents moved the ships. There were no engines on these ships. Um, current currents were moving these ships to different countries, and the trade pattern that you see to your right was developed. The invention of the steam engine replaced sails, and that really changed the game on um, quote unquote ocean freight at the time. Ships were not, and trade routes were not dependent on ocean currents. The invention of the cargo ship in 1956 was a huge game changer. Um, it made essentially just one more or less container that everything could be put into, stacked, and protected instead of having just a ship with a bunch of goods and products on it. The cargo container created a vessel, which things could just be, stacked neatly, protected, and organized, and moved in one container. The process of how ocean freight works is pretty interesting as well. Um, we all think about large amounts of products, packages, goods, packed in a cargo container, loaded and unloaded from the ship. That is true. Uh, there's a little detail in how cargo containers are loaded. They use either full container load or less than container load. And full container load is the most cost efficient way. Uh, the shipper pays for the whole container. one price, and they can put as much as they want to in it, or as little as they want to in it, and they can put anything they want to in it. Less than container load, a little different. One shipper may rent half of the container. They pay by the square footage, and then a different shipper may um, make up put their items in the container in the space that's left, and they also pay by the square footage. So you could have 2, 3, or even more shippers in the same cargo container. Um, once that is all hashed out, the containers are loaded onto a cargo ship. Once the ship is loaded, it sets sail across the ocean until it gets to the destination port. Once it's at the port, it'll be unloaded. Each container will be unloaded, and the containers will be held in cargo yards. Once the containers are there, they'll go through customs, and hopefully they get cleared, and they will continue through the supply chain either by rail, truck, air, whatever the plan is for those items, they will continue through the supply chain. Ocean freight is incredibly cost efficient. You can move a lot of items for a pretty affordable price, and it brings your price per item, the input cost of transporting and shipping that item, real low. Around 90% of international trade involves transport by ship. When that is huge, that means almost everything you have from overseas, came over here on a ship. Think about how many items you have and products and goods you have that are made in China or somewhere in Asia. That's huge. It's a huge market. Um, Developing countries really depend on this method because if country A needs to trade with country B, they're on the other side of the ocean from one another. Really, the only way the country A that's developing can get their goods to country B affordably is ocean freight. That has a huge impact on the supply chain. Large or small quantities of products, that doesn't really matter. Something that's really important is the ocean freight has leaves a small carbon footprint compared to trucking or air. I mean, it's just incredibly efficient, fuel wise. Another great thing is transportation times are pretty accurate. I mean, you're not gonna have a traffic jam in the middle of the ocean. At least you shouldn't, like you would with trucking or you know air delays at airports. You may be delayed at the port, but that's not really something we see unless it's something crazy like COVID-19. COVID-19 had a huge impact on ocean freight. I was actually uh, working on my undergrad in 2020 when COVID, first happened. I remember I could see on the news that cargo ships were stuck outside of ports, just more or less stranded at sea, and that really caused a ripple through the supply chain, a disruption, and man, those were not good times. Ships had to wait, weeks and months to be unloaded, uh, and then on top of that, cargo containers were near impossible to get. New ones had such a long lead time, and there's a bunch stuck out at sea, and all the ones that were available were being used. A bunch were were retired and brought back into service, and that was also a huge detriment to ocean freight at the time was the lack of the ability to acquire cargo containers. Customs were hesitant to inspect cargo containers due to the virus. If goods were coming from overseas, say China. Somebody in America may not want to go in the cargo container to clear the, you know, clear the customs, and that could set them back too. So, well, thank y'all for tuning in to my presentation. I hope I didn't ramble on too much and bore you, but at the surface, ocean freight seems kind of boring till you dive into it and you realize that all this stuff, the way you load containers, loading the ship, setting sail, unloading the ship, you know, clearing customs, just the more you dive into it and read about, just the volume of goods and products that move across the ocean, it's kind of unreal. And I really enjoyed writing on this and presenting this, so hope y'all learned something. Thank you.